All right, welcome back to another episode of Bear's Guide to a 5. Today we are exploring the third lesson in the Unit 7 talking about urbanization, megalopolises, and other urban topics. And what we're going to be diving into a little bit here is looking at urbanization over the next couple days, looking at urbanization in the developing world and how urbanization has affected the developed world. And obviously, the developed world's not urbanizing as much anymore as the developing world, but both have impacts that we need to talk about. So starting off, we have to understand, where did cities even come from, or this concept of cities, or these settlements of urban areas? Now, urbanization began in many places all over the planet, just like agriculture did all over places over the planet, and just like agriculture, it happened in major areas that had river valleys. We're talking in the Middle East, we're talking in India, we're talking in China. And the same way with our agriculture hearths, we got to know where our urban hearths are. So the four you need to know are, with India, the Indus River Valley; China, the Yangtze, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong; Egypt, the Nile River; and Iraq with the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, or Mesopotamia. Now notice all of these are based on river valleys because these are the places where the agricultural revolutions happened, and because of the agricultural surplus from the Neolithic Revolution, from this idea of producing all this grain, from having all this surplus of food, we start urbanizing, we start cities, because we now don't need everybody focused on finding food and eating. We can have people focused on other things. And yes, you must memorize where these are. So urbanization by definition is the growth of cities. Now, we know that cities are popping up all over the planet, and more than 50% of people live in an urban area. And we also know, looking all the way back in population, that LDCs are growing rapidly compared to the developed world. We know that about a billion people, a little over a billion people, live in the developed world, while over 7 billion people live in the developing world. So to understand the urbanization, I mean, can't even fathom how quickly they're having to urbanize because so many people are moving to these cities and having kids in these cities. Now, the developed world, we've already done the urbanization thing, right? We've already built our cities. Now we're shifting to more suburbanization, and that's what we'll explore more in the upcoming lessons. Now, to talk about urbanization in the developing world, we have to go back to colonialism. Yep, our old friend colonialism and that core-periphery relationship. Remember, this all happens because these colonies were established to steal these resources from these colonized places, and they set up the ports along the coast to do that exact thing. And then once they weren't colonized, these countries now have to figure out how to make money. So of course, they're going to do what they've always done. They're going to have an export-oriented economy, right? This should be really recognizable. Same stuff, we're just building on it. So you combine that with a high birth rate and no jobs in the periphery, and you have rural to urban migration, what we talked about in Unit 3. See, we're just wrapping all of this together. And because you have all of these people moving to cities in the developing world, and you only have so many cities in the developing world, what we create are megacities and primate cities. Now we can't follow that rank size rule and distribute our services evenly and make sure everybody has, access to these services to raise the HDI of the countries. We're now putting all our eggs in one basket into these primate cities and developing them. And then the cities that we're building are based off those models that you learned in the previous lesson. So what we have to talk about is this concept of a megalopolis. What happens when urbanization runs into each other? So a megalopolis occurs when metro areas or urban areas just run into each other. Their suburbs get so big, they keep sprawling out. We use this term urban sprawl, where we're just widening the urban area, including the suburban area, and eventually they meet into each other. So there's no rural area in between, and that's what we call megalopolis. We see this happen in the developed world and in the developing world. Now, the largest megalopolis, this does happen more in the developed world because we've already developed our urban areas and we're building our suburbs, but the largest one that you need to know is the Boswash Corridor in the United States. Yeah, it looks like that. How exciting. And then the largest one in the world is the Tokyo-Yokohama megalopolis in Japan. But it would make sense for Japan to be completely urbanized or to have a large megalopolis, seeing as how they're an island, they're a high developed country. Just kind of, yeah, makes sense. But once again, it all comes back to urban sprawl and growing these urban areas, growing the suburbs, and them running into each other. Another various term we got to cover are gateway cities. These are cities that act as a metaphorical gateway into a new area. Some examples include the Arch in St. Louis, or New Orleans as being the gateway for the Mississippi, Istanbul between Asia and Europe, or Alexandria on the Nile River. I would remember these, mark these in your mind. It is a metaphorical thing. It is a random vocab term, but College Board wants you to know it. And then we have forward capitals. Now, this is a really interesting thing, and it goes kind of with planned capitals. When we talked about these rank size rule and primate cities, what countries can do to fix the issue of having a primate city to make sure that services are evenly distributed amongst all of its people, to make sure that the country develops evenly, they can create a forward capital. They'll take the capital from a core area, maybe along the coast, and put it in the peripheral area in an attempt to have people migrate to that new capital. And when you plan, you can also say it's a planned capital, that some countries plan where their capital is going to be, whether to show importance, to show wealth, to show power. Washington, D.C. is an example because we planned to put it there after the first one was burned down. But with a forward capital, looking at Brazil and Brasilia, right? That they move that capital into the periphery of Brazil to hopefully get people in there, get businesses out there to build the periphery a little bit. Some last minute vocab to wrap this up. We have festival landscapes that you got to know about, emerging cities, urban hydrology, and urban island heat effect. Pretty straightforward vocab that you have to know for the course. So I would take a time to just pause this and write these down and know these vocab words. Okay, so there's a couple things that you need to know today. One, you have to know the location, Hearths of urbanization, and two, you have to understand how colonialism affected urbanization in the developing world. And then, yeah, of course, you need to know all that other stuff too, all the random vocab words, forward capitals, planned capitals, and the various about. But what I do want you to do to check for your homework is finish these two assignments or two, I don't know, activities. One, why are LDCs growing at a faster rate than MDCs? Make sure to answer this question and try to impress me here. Use all the knowledge you can because, we're a couple weeks out from the AP exam, so it would be great now to start flexing that entire knowledge that you have created over this year. And then two, I need you to create a visual example for each of the following terms, and I'll be checking these in class, and for e-learners, you'll be uploading them to Canvas. So if you have any questions, make sure that you wrote them down in your notebook so you can address them in class. If you have any questions, make sure to bring it up then. And for me, hit like and subscribe so you're updated for when new videos drop on YouTube. As always, this is Bear's Guide to a 5, and I'll see you next time.